Now to the latest on health care, the Republican health care bill in the Senate, and Jimmy Kimmel.
If your baby is going to die, and it doesn't have to, it shouldn't matter how much money you make. I think that's something that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or something else, we all agree on that, right? I mean, we do. I saw a lot of families there, and no parent should ever have to decide if they can afford to save their child's life. It just shouldn't happen. Not here. So.
After Jimmy Kimmel told that powerful story of how doctors at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles performed life-saving surgery on his newborn son, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana proposed what he thought of this term, the Jimmy Kimmel test for health care legislation. Senator Cassidy's Jimmy Kimmel test is: would any child born with the same heart disease as Jimmy Kimmel's son be able to get everything he or she would need in the first year of life, even if it cost more than a certain amount of money? Senator Cassidy was a guest on Jimmy Kimmel's show after Jimmy Kimmel's emotional monologue.
Lowering premiums with coverage that passes the Jimmy Kimmel test. If we do that, we get an American plan, not Democrat, not Republican, an American plan, and that's where we need to be.
Senator, since the Jimmy Kimmel test, I think, should be no family should be denied medical care, emergency or otherwise, because they can't afford it. Can that be the Jimmy Kimmel test, as simple as that? Is that oversimplifying it?
Hey, man, you're on the right track. And if that's as close as we can get, that works great in government.
And that was a very slippery politician's answer that Jimmy Kimmel's audience was hearing there. He did not actually agree with Jimmy Kimmel's version of the Kimmel test. Instead, he simply said that Jimmy Kimmel's idea was on the right track. And now that very same Senator Cassidy is pushing a health care bill that will repeal and replace Obamacare and would completely fail the Jimmy Kimmel test. Millions upon millions of people would lose health care under the Cassidy bill that is being co-sponsored by Senator Lindsey Graham. But we don't know exactly how many millions, because the Congressional Budget Office has not even scored the bill yet, but Republicans are still ready to vote for it. Senator John McCain, whose best friend in the Senate is Lindsey Graham, cast the deciding no vote the last time the Republicans tried to pass a health care bill in the Senate. Here's what John McCain told reporters today about the Graham-Cassidy bill. I am not supportive of the bill yet. When asked what he needs to be able to support the bill, John McCain said, among other things, the regular order, lots of things. Regular order means having hearings on the bill in the House and in the Senate, and then having committee votes on the bill in the House and in the Senate, and then voting on the bill on the Senate floor where it is open to amendment by any senator. That process normally takes several months at least, and there are only 12 days left for the Senate Republicans to pass a health care bill in the Senate under the procedural protection of the rule called reconciliation, where the bill needs only 51 votes to pass. Joining us now, Andy Slavitt, the former acting administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services from 2015 to 2017. Also joining us is Jennifer Rubin, opinion writer for The Washington Post. And Jennifer, you wrote about this Cassidy-Graham bill today for The Washington Post, and Jimmy Kimmel tweeted your article to his 10 million followers, and you make the point very clearly in this article that the Cassidy bill fails the Kimmel test.
That's right. One of the things it does, for example, is put a per capita caps the Medicaid for every state, so that people who are enjoying Medicaid benefits won't enjoy Medicaid benefits in the future. We're not just talking about rolling back the extension of Medicaid. We're talking about a worse cut for Medicaid. We're talking about giving states the right to redefine what the minimum benefits are. Maybe they're going to define minimum benefits as excluding birth defects. Maybe they're going to define it as not including heart defects, which is one of the things that, which was the defect that Jimmy Kimmel's son was born with. They also have the ability under the Cassidy-Graham bill to decide that pre-existing conditions maybe don't have to be covered completely. So in the guise of sending it back to the states, in the guise of federalism, it's really the most draconian of all versions. And you're right, they're trying to rush this through in the dead of night. I would say one thing, however. They really don't have 12 days because, pardon the pun, thank goodness we have the Jewish holidays. So they'll be out on Thursday and Friday, and then by next Friday, they better be out by sundown. So they really have less than 12 days. And I would suggest that if Democrats are concerned about this, that they slow things down, make people read the bill, make people discuss it, find out what's in it.
And Andy Slavitt, one thing that the Democrats are demanding is a full CBO score of this bill. Chairman Orrin Hatch, the Senate Finance Committee, is scheduling a hearing on the bill next week. And that seems to be the Finance Committee's nod to John McCain's demand for regular order. But that's not regular order for a bill like this. The Senate Finance Committee had 24 hearings, as I recall, when we were considering the Clinton health care bill, and almost as many hearings and meetings, at least, over the Obamacare.
Well, this has all the features of a rush job. So the Republicans are now prepared to bring this bill to the floor without a full CBO score. The CBO has said today they will not be able to score the bill in the time frame that Jennifer just laid out. We also know that this hearing you're talking about is a rushed together kind of hearing, a show hearing, hoping that can get McCain to check the box. And then third, we just heard word tonight, it's not yet been reported, that the great work that Lamar Alexander has been doing with Patty Murray to try to come to a bipartisan bill, that the Republican leadership has put a stop to that bill to apply pressure for people to say, you've got to vote for this Cassidy bill or you're not going to have anything at all. So this is more rush job of a very harmful bill.
And Jennifer, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, John McCain stopped the last Republican bill. Based on what they said about the last Republican bill and what was in it and why they were voting against it in terms of the content of the bill, and we know Senator McCain said a lot about the procedure, but the content of the bill, how is this different from the content of what they voted against before?
It's worse. They were concerned about Medicaid cuts. They were concerned about cuts for rural health care. They were concerned about a lot of things. And this really is worse because essentially by pushing it back to the states, they can do essentially whatever they want. By the way, that might entail in blue states setting up a single payer system. So Republicans could be slitting their throats. They'd be sending out a bunch of experiments in single payer health care. So that's probably not what they really want either.
And Andy Slavitt, when Senator McCain made his really kind of emotional first speech on the Senate floor after he was diagnosed with brain cancer, it was all about the procedures of the Senate and the procedures of content. It was more of Congress. It was more about that than the content of the bill. And he kept talking about regular order. And when I heard him say that, it sounded to me like he absolutely was going to have to vote against the bill that was in front of them, because, as I said, regular order is a minimum of 6 to 9 months of consideration of a bill like this before it comes to a vote. How could he possibly vote for something like this rushed through a truly fake version of regular order if that's what they're going to pretend to do?
Lawrence, that's a great point. If you think about it, you think about what Senator McCain's legacy will end up being if he reverses himself under something that he got universal plaudits for. He'll end up in a situation where we will have passed the most partisan, one-sided bill by a partisan process, only, of course, to have the Democrats very likely attempt to do the same thing in the next election, and so on and so on and so on. And I don't think Senator McCain wants to be responsible for that. All due respect to his friendship to Senator Graham, all due respect to his loyalty to the party, he would be setting off a wave of things, long probably beyond his time in the Senate, that would create an atmosphere of partisanship that would be well beyond even where we sit today. We can put a stop to it.
So far, Rand Paul's the only Republican senator coming out against it, saying it's not conservative enough. Susan Collins is saying she's concerned about the bill, but not taking a position for or against it just yet. We're going to keep covering it. Jennifer Rubin and Andy Slavitt, thank you both for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.